Last December, I set out to Norway with a singular goal in mind: to see the Northern Lights. And after around 16 hours of travel, I finally made it to the town of Leknes. The Northern Lights are a phenomenon when energy particles from the sun slam into Earth's upper atmosphere. And they can come at speeds of up to 45 million miles per hour. That's a fast particle. Earth's atmosphere redirects these particles toward the poles, creating the glorious light show that is the aurora borealis. In October of 2019, I took a trip to Iceland with my brother and a couple of our friends with the goal to see and just capture some photos of the Northern Lights. We spent 10 days in a camper van, driving around, hoping for clear skies and that the aurora would show itself.
Oh my goodness, thank God.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Good stuff.
Wow.
Very cool.
You think in 10 days we would have seen something, but unfortunately we were skunked. On one of the last nights, we did get out and do a little bit of astrophotography, and we saw some faint green hues in our photos after the fact, but as far as the naked eye was concerned, we didn't see squat. So fast forward to October of 2023. I had just gotten home from a run and sat down to scroll on my phone. Now as I was scrolling, this article popped up, titled, "The next 4 to 5 years will be the best time to see the Northern Lights this solar cycle." A solar cycle is an 11-year period of solar activity driven by the sun's magnetic field, and it's indicated by the frequency and intensity of sunspots visible on the sun's surface. And sometime within the next 5 years, the sun will reach its highest rate of activity, or solar maximum. So as I read this article, and as I got to the bottom of it, there was one sentence that really caught my attention. Experts previously estimated that the sun's activity would peak in 2025, but some recent estimations suggest it could arrive as early as the end of 2023. And with that, I was sold. With my job, December is usually the slowest part of the year, and coincidentally, that's also peak aurora season. Winters in the Arctic, the sun never really gets above the horizon. There is faint amount of lights for about 4 hours each day, and that's pretty much it. The next 20 hours are spent in almost complete darkness. Which, if your goal is to see the Northern Lights, dark skies are going to give you the best opportunity to do so. Lofoten is an archipelago in northern Norway. It has extremely distinctive scenery, with dramatic mountains and peaks, open seas and sheltered bays, beaches, and small fishing villages. It's literally like something you would read out of a fantasy novel. And it had been on my bucket list for as long as I can remember. So I figured this would be the best opportunity to go see it and to hopefully capture some of those elusive Northern Lights. Eventually, the day came to leave, and I flew direct from Denver to Iceland. Now, Iceland has been one of my favorite countries for as long as I can remember. It is literally the first country that I ever went to internationally. So I spent 3 days there, and then I made my way to Oslo, and then Bodo, and finally to a little town called Leknes. Leknes sits about halfway into the Lofoten Peninsula. The airport has 1 runway and about 8 rental cars. And if you've ever seen the movie The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, this is exactly how I felt.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you have any cars available?
Yeah, we have a blue one and a red one.
I'll take the red one.
I had arrived at around 6 a.m., which meant that I still had at least 3 hours of darkness before the sun even started to rise. And even though I had been traveling about 12 hours at that point, I had to get out, go drive around, and see if I could find some Northern Lights. I only drove for about 15 to 20 minutes before I had to pull over and get my camera out. This is where I had my first glimpse of the absolute beauty that is the Northern Lights. And from that moment on, it was pretty clear this trip was gonna be nothing like the Iceland trip I had a few years earlier. Good morning, everybody. So it is a very rainy and cold day here in Lofoten. Last night, my first official night here, I was able to get some really cool shots of the Northern Lights. Last night was just insane. All the photos, literally every photo I took pretty much had some aspect of the Northern Lights in it. I stayed up till like 3 a.m. filming and shooting stuff, so I feel a little bit zonked. What I didn't realize at the time was that first night would be one of the only clear nights that I got when I was on this trip. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Because the weather was so bad, I took the rest of the day to just kind of hang out and catch up on sleep. And then I ate a delicious lamb chop dinner and then headed back out to hopefully catch some more auroras. Because daylight is so limited, most of the time that I spent exploring was at night. So most of my photos and videos are just generally pretty dark or taken in dark environments. And for as long as I've been shooting, I've never really been forced to take so many night photos. So Norway was a great place to just kind of practice my long exposure photography and a few other techniques that photographers use during night. You know, it's just really fun to shoot because everything here just pops. The different reds and oranges and stuff really stand out from the white snow. The other cool part that I've really noticed is there are no buildings that are bigger than like a Target would be back in the States. The next day I continued my journey west. My goal was to make it to a little town called Rena, pretty close to the westernmost tip of the Lofoten Peninsula. The bad weather ended up following me, and the entire time that I was in Rena, it just absolutely dumped. It wasn't until the third night when I randomly woke up at 3 a.m. and realized the rain had stopped. I looked out my window and saw that the clouds had actually cleared up a little bit too. So I grabbed my gear and jumped in the rental car to hopefully try and find a spot where there wasn't any clouds and I could hopefully get a clearing in the sky. I finally found what looked like a good composition pretty close to this place called Anita's Seafood, which this is super random, but it's actually a place that has whale steak on the menu, which I find to be so strange. Anyways, I ended up staying up and shooting until about 7 a.m. and I was actually able to get a few faint auroras in my photos, surprisingly. Because I hadn't seen auroras at this point in a few days, seeing this proved to me that the auroras were still out there. I just had to find a good spot with clear skies in order to see them. Because Rena has a little bit of a microclimate where storms can just sit in the Bay Area for days at a time, I decided to head even further west to some of the other towns where it looked like the weather wasn't as harsh. Here I was able to put up the drone and I was even able to make it to the westernest most part that you could drive to on the peninsula. So this is pretty much it. This is as far west as you could possibly get, at least driving wise, in the Lofoten Islands. It is cool that you can see the trailhead where a lot of the really cool trails start. In the summers, I'm sure this place is just absolutely packed. They actually have tour buses parked in that tunnel over there, and I think those are primarily just for the summer months when there's a lot of people here. But for now, this is as far as I'm gonna go because of all of the weather and wind and rain and snow that's been going on the last couple days. So I'm not trying to get into a serious hiking situation where I kind of get stuck. Plus, you know, it's like noon right now, and this is about as light out as it gets, especially with all these clouds. I'm gonna get out of this wind as soon as possible and head back that way. Now, hiking is a huge tourist attraction in Lofoten, and this parking lot that I was standing in was probably at full capacity during the summer months. I'm sure getting in and out of that parking lot during the summer would be a nightmare. But in the winter, there is nobody there. Now obviously I didn't do any hiking. The freezing cold temperatures and the multiple feet of snow made me a little bit hesitant of taking on a hike. That being said, just because I wasn't out there didn't mean other people weren't out there. There were people doing all sorts of crazy shit. There was one day where I was able to capture a guy surfing on freezing cold Arctic water. The shot is one of my favorite shots from the entire trip, but it's absolutely insane to me that dudes will go out there and just surf when it is 30 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Eventually, I made a one last ditch effort to get away from the rain, and I headed 70 miles north to what quickly became my favorite town in Norway, Henningsvær. So as you can see, the weather has officially improved. I am finally out of the rain and out of the cold, and the wind was just horrible. So now we're finally kind of like out of it a little bit. So it's very nice. It's really cold, but it's nice to have a morning that's, you know, it's like not super windy, not raining, not hailing in my face. So yeah, very excited to be here. And yeah, just kind of looking forward to see what the town has to offer. This town was by far my favorite. It had amazing scenery, cheap hotel stays, wonderful people, and these really interesting stores that sat right on the harbor. I ended up spending quite a bit of time here. The clear skies and relatively nice weather made it hard to leave. But eventually, all good things come to an end, and the snow rolled back in. Overnight, the town went from looking like this to this. I stuck around just long enough to freeze my fingers off trying to get some drone shots, but the next morning I knew it was time to move on. So this might be one of my earliest mornings here. It is currently 9 a.m., which is hilarious to think about 9 a.m. as being my earliest morning here. You know, if you have the option to sleep in or not, and all you're gonna see is darkness, you know, it makes a lot of sense to sleep in, especially when you're staying up late trying to see the northern lights. Pretty much today, I'm just gonna drive to Svolvær and check out that town a little bit and just drive a little bit more of the coast. I only have 2 days left, sadly, here, so I'm just trying to make them last as much as possible and see as much as I possibly can. And hopefully see the northern lights at least one more time. Whether that's tonight or tomorrow night, I guess, you know, we're gonna have to find out. Because my return flight left pretty early in the morning on that third day, that meant I had 2 days and 2 nights to do some more exploring and hopefully get some clear skies to have a chance to see the northern lights one last time. Once I got to Svolvær, I made a game plan for the upcoming days. I found the areas that looked the most clear on my weather map, and regardless of how far out of the way they were, I would spend the next 2 days hitting every single one of those spots until I made it back to Leknes. It's kind of crazy to think about it now, but over that 2-week period that I was in Norway, those last 2 days are some of the most memorable days that I have. Up to that point, I thought I had pretty much seen and done everything I wanted to. But it's usually those unexpected things, or the things that you don't plan on, that create the most memorable experiences. Along my journey back to Leknes, I found some of the most crystal clear reflections that I have ever seen, with sharp mountains covered top to bottom in snow, churches sitting atop hills with background scenery that was unmatched to anything I had ever seen before. Even a surprise visit from the moon, which I hadn't seen for the entire trip. I also got to see my first sunset in Norway, which again, because of the weather, was something I hadn't seen the entire trip. And the whole time I was accompanied by my trusty steed, the rental car. I spent those last 2 days almost entirely in that thing. I slept in it, I ate in it, I didn't go to the bathroom in it, but for those last 2 days, it was my home. I woke up a lot just to have 15 minutes of turning the car on, blasting the heat, and hopefully getting warm, and then turning it off, only to wake up in another hour freezing my ass off. Sleeping in the front seat of a car is definitely uncomfortable, but when there's the possibility to wake up at midnight and just look out the windshield and see the northern lights, it's 100% worth it, because on that last night of the trip, parked just outside another small town, tucked away in a cove, the sky exploded with color, just like it had done on the first night of the trip. I stayed up until 5 a.m. watching the colors dance across the sky, taking some photos, but also just kind of enjoying the moment. And with 2 hours until my plane took off, I headed to the airport and spent the next 18 hours of travel dreaming about those northern lights. Hey, I hope that you all enjoyed this video. This video took me far too long to finish. I started this back in February of 2024, and considering it's October, it has taken me just so long to finish this video. This is the most labor-intensive project I've tried to really do, and it wasn't because I was editing it the whole time. It was more so because I didn't really know where I wanted to go with the story and just how I wanted everything to flow. But I finally settled on this, and so I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. And if you made it to this point, I am just very appreciative. And if you could just do me one more favor and just either like the video or leave a comment or even share the video if you liked it that much. It really just helps the video get seen by more people, which helps me out in the long run. So I would really appreciate it if you did that. Any of the photos that you see in this video are available as prints on my website. So if you did see any that you thought you might want to buy as a print, they are available on my website. So be sure and go check that out. If you have any questions about Norway or traveling to Norway solo, please leave those in the comments, or my Instagram DMs are always open. So if you do have any questions, you can just hit me up directly too. I'm excited to hear from you guys. I'm excited to hear what you think of this. And yeah, I'm gonna end it there. So again, I really appreciate you guys making it this far, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.